Single black dad's amazing act after driving his drunk boss home reveals a hidden transformation. As Marcus swerved his battered sedan through the dimly lit streets of Atlanta, anxiety prickled at the back of his neck. He felt like a juggler, the night's chaos swirling around him like uncaught balls of responsibility, his startup dreams, his son Jamal's endless needs, and now Greg, his intoxicated boss, slouched in the passenger seat. "You're a lifesaver, Marcus," Greg slurred, oblivious to the seismic weight crushing Marcus's chest. Was he really a lifesaver? More like a life raft trapped in a storm. Balancing Jamal's school schedule with late-night meetings had made his dreams feel like a mirage, always in sight yet forever out of reach. Frustration surged within him like boiling water as he remembered the last promotion meeting where he'd been overlooked again. He'd watched, bitter and helpless, as peers he trained were handed titles, while he remained just a step below, appealing but unseen. It stung. No matter how hard he worked, would even the simplest acknowledgement be beyond his grasp? "Things can be tough, huh?" Greg's voice broke through his thoughts, heavy with liquor and candor. "It's like I'm playing chess while everyone else has a cheat code." Marcus forced a chuckle, but inside, a furious storm brewed. He wanted to scream, to tell Greg about the sleepless nights and how he waged a silent war against systemic barriers that kept him from soaring. Instead, they danced around the specters of inadequacy. Greg, the white executive full of privilege; Marcus, the black father weighed down by the expectation to be more than he felt capable of. As they approached an unexpected roadblock, Marcus slammed his foot on the brakes, and the car lurched forward. Everything stopped. Shadows loomed in the headlights as his mind became a blur of confusion. Was this his life? A constant halt in the progress he craved. Frustration tightened around him, squeezing out the air. He was caught in an invisible noose, wrestling with a disparity that felt insurmountable. He wanted to shout, to break the silence and lay bare every resentment against the glass ceiling. After finally unloading Greg at his home, Marcus drove aimlessly, the city lights flickering past like the scattered pieces of a broken dream. Upon arriving at his father's old house, he parked, feeling an invisible call. Inside, the dust settled upon memories, and then it hit him. A dusty box tucked away in the attic beckoned like a siren. As he pried it open, the musty scent of old paper flooded his senses, revealing his father's manuscript on entrepreneurship. The words leapt off the aging pages, filled with ambition and perseverance. Marcus felt a spark ignite. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." His blood surged with renewed purpose, but the burden of affection and loyalty to his son wrestled within him. What if following his father's dreams meant sacrificing time with Jamal? The familiarity of internal conflict clawed at his resolve. In that moment, standing in the attic with his father's voice echoing through him, he felt one thing more than anything else: a relentless determination to not just reclaim his respect but to uplift others like him. Yet doubt clung like a shadow, whispering he might fail, or worse, be unheard. As he stood in front of his company the next day, ready to present his life-changing plan, dread coiled around him. Would he finally break free from the constraints that dictated his reality? Would his words be granted the power they deserved, or would they dissolve into silence like so many before him? The air thickened with tension as he prepared to speak. Would his voice be the change that echoed through generations, or just another unanswered plea? The weight of expectation lay heavy, leaving the outcome uncertain and the moment unbearable. Marcus stood before the conference room, his colleagues seated around a polished table that felt both alien and familiar. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow that intensified the sweat beading at the nape of his neck. He could feel Greg's lingering influence in the room, the unearned confidence he exuded, and it fueled the storm within Marcus. The contents of his father's manuscript burned like a live ember in his mind, stoking an inner fire that demanded to be expressed. "Today, I want to share something with you," he began, his voice a few octaves higher than usual. Each word came out deliberately, as if he were laying down fragile bricks in a structure that needed to withstand both time and scrutiny. "I've been working on a plan for our next quarter that could transform how we engage with market challenges while also fostering a more inclusive environment within our team." As the ideas spilled forth, he could sense the skepticism etched across the faces around the table. They leaned back in their chairs, arms crossed. It was a familiar stance. Yet, he pressed on, describing the innovative strategies that could not only elevate profits but also encourage collaboration across all levels of the company. With each bullet point illustrated, he recalled the faces of the workers overlooked, the talent stifled by an unforgiving hierarchy, his own nightly discussions with Jamal serving as a backdrop, urging him to fight harder for opportunities that should have been accessible from the start. But then, like a wave crashing over him, doubt reared its head. What if this presentation turned into another dismissal? Would he be ushered out of that room, just another voice lost in the sea of corporate indifference? Brief flashes of those past promotions he'd seen taken away, combined with the profound stinging realization of remaining invisible, threatened to drown out his resolve. But there he stood, a single father and a son's unsung hero. "I'm not here just for myself," he pressed, shaking off the internal chaos. His words took on a life of their own, they were laced with purpose and experience gained through struggles most wouldn't acknowledge. "I want this company to reflect what we can achieve collectively because together, we can dominate the competition while also creating pathways for everyone to succeed." Silence enveloped the room after his final statement, leaving the air thick with tension. He caught Greg's eye, the man who had once overlooked him now sat as an emblem of both his frustrations and the potential for climbing higher. The seconds ticked by, each resembling an agonizing eternity. Finally, one of his colleagues spoke up, a woman named Sarah, someone he'd always respected for her insight. "You're proposing significant changes," she said slowly. "Can you outline how you envision implementing these strategies without disrupting current workflows?" Marcus's pulse quickened, this was a challenge in opening. He smiled as he embraced it. "Absolutely," he replied, launching into detailed steps on how they could pivot without losing sight of their goals. With each word, he felt the weight of his father's legacy encourage him onward. The room began to shift. Nods and murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the group as his passion became infectious. Perhaps this was the moment he had been waiting for, the platform that would turn his frustrations into tangible progression. But just as hope threatened to spiral into something tangible, the doubt snuck back in. What if he was talking so fast because he feared silence? What if they nodded simply out of politeness? The confrontation with their expectations loomed large. His heart pounded, not just with excitement but with the incessant need to not falter again. "Let's be realistic here," Marcus stated boldly, arms spread in affirmation of his sincerity, "we can't keep pushing forward with outdated practices. It's time we reflect the evolving landscape around us. Are we ready to change?" The air pulsed heavily, echoing with the weight of his question. Leaving everyone to contemplate the implications of his bold stance. The moment had arrived, and with it, he felt thrilling uncertainty jab at him. In stillness, an unexpected voice emerged. "The time has come to face our fears, Marcus, but are we prepared for the consequences?" As murmurs of hesitation filled the room, Marcus steeled himself. Would this be the battle that solidified his voice, or would it retreat back into the shadows? As anticipation thrummed through him, he understood that whatever happened next would define not just his professional journey, but his essence as a father and a man. With a deep breath, he prepared to step deeper into the tumultuous waters of change, knowing that each stroke would either bring him closer to the surface or pull him farther down. The outcome remained precarious, yet amidst the uncertainty, he sensed an undeniable truth: determination could blossom from facing adversity head-on, but at what cost? A taut silence enveloped the room as Marcus steeled himself against the weight of the question that had just dangled in the air. The challenge was palpable, Greg's skepticism remained entrenched, his condescending smirk a familiar reminder of past failures. Yet somewhere deep within, a flicker of resolve ignited. This was not just about him. It was his chance to reshape his narrative, to emerge not just as a worker but as a leader. The consequences, Marcus said, his voice steady, are what we make of them. Change is uncomfortable, but isn't a certain level of discomfort vital for growth? A fire doesn't forge stronger metal without some pain involved. Sarah leaned forward, intrigued, while the others exchanged glances. He saw a hint of curiosity mingling with their uncertainty. What do you propose we do about implementation? Someone asked, prompting him to dig deeper into the conversation. First, Marcus began, let us run pilot programs that allow us to experiment with these strategies on a smaller scale. Start with departments that are more open to risk, learn from the results, and adapt as we go. We can refine our approach without disrupting our core functions. Each point he articulated cemented a foundation of competence under his wavering confidence. The inkling of authority began to unfurl in his chest. He could see the wheels turning in Sarah's mind, her respect beginning to blossom into something more substantial. And what if these pilot programs fail? Greg interjected, his tone dripping with derision. You're suggesting we waste resources on a whim? On the contrary, Marcus retorted, meeting Greg's glare head-on. Failure is not wasted when we learn from it. In fact, isn't risk a necessary component of innovation? I believe that my father's manuscript, which speaks about the importance of understanding our past to propel forward, applies here too. We must embrace mistakes as stepping stones, not setbacks. As his words cascaded into the room, he felt the stirrings of hope fought back by the vestiges of doubt. The impassioned responses flooding from colleagues shifted increasingly towards affirmation. Talk is cheap, Marcus, Greg sneered, but Marcus refused to fall into the familiar trap of annoyance. Instead, he turned the interaction into an opportunity. Then can you help define what it would take to gain your support? The directness of his question visibly shifted the group dynamics. It was no longer just him against Greg but all of them navigating toward a collective fate. He could sense the group uniting against the anxiety threaded through their uncertainties. For the first time, laughter cascaded softly through the group. Questions transformed into constructive dialogues rather than futile arguments. The transformation was palpable as voices rose in unison, thoughts began intertwining growth with resistance. Together we can build proposals that not only challenge the status quo but push us toward a future where everyone can contribute and benefit, Marcus found himself saying passionately. He relayed examples based on recent industry trends, feeling the rush of knowledge coursing through him. He wasn't merely a cog in the machine anymore. He could lead. But a thought intruded like dark water lapping at the edges of a resolve built on shaky ground. Was the newfound dynamism around the table real, or just ephemeral chatter? The room buzzed with ideas, it felt electric. Yet, beneath that hum, a deeper anxiety gnawed at Marcus. Would this moment culminate in success, or would he face a looming backlash despite their camaraderie? What if, in experiencing this fleeting triumph, he built expectations that would only crumble under scrutiny and leave him exposed? Let us schedule follow-ups next week to outline our targets and metrics. I want us to measure both progress and any potential setbacks, Marcus said, straining to maintain focus. The weight of responsibility sat heavy on his shoulders. As conversations circled with renewed energy, he felt excitement stir among his peers, but his inner dialogue was an unyielding echo. And then it hit him. What if he was indeed underestimated within this very circle of colleagues, a truth he had prided himself on discarding from his psyche? But the revelation felt like a window opening, letting fresh air in, a shift he had never recognized. He feared embracing. Now, I must ask the question, he intoned, do we want to be a team that just schemes the surface, or do we want to dive deep? With that, he stood at the edge of confrontation, poised for the decision that would shape his future. As they wrapped up, Marcus couldn't shake a sense of impending tumult ripping just beneath the surface. Was he truly ready to plunge into such depths? Uncertainty twisted the corners of his mouth into a tight line. The presence of his father's legacy remained palpable, yet he had to confront his own shadow, the fear that lived intertwined with this moment of potential. With thoughts swirling and anticipation swirling heavy, he realized he was at a crossroads yet again. The next discussion held further personal stakes than he could have ever anticipated. What awaited him when he would speak truth to power? Would this be his true test? The room buzzed with energy, but a challenge loomed larger than any corporate meeting: his own identity, both as a father and as a man. What would he uncover about himself next? As the week progressed, Marcus found himself increasingly consumed by the upcoming follow-up meeting. The initial buzz of enthusiasm had dulled to a nagging anxiety that clawed at the edges of his thoughts. Each passing moment deepened his awareness of the stakes involved, not just for the project but for his burgeoning identity as a leader. He spent late nights poring over industry reports and drafting proposals, but something gnawed at him. The fear that his emerging resolve was merely a facade, that he would once again find himself sidelined by self-doubt, loomed like a dark cloud. The weight of his father's legacy hung heavy. Each word from the old manuscript echoed in his mind, urging him toward a path of growth while simultaneously confronting the shadows of his own past failures. "Your father's voice is in your head, not your own," he muttered to himself on the drive home one evening, the city's lights blurring past. Maybe it was time to quiet those voices and confront something more immediate, his personal life. The precarious balance between being a father and now a leader weighed heavily. How could he inspire his team while ensuring he was present for his son? Thoughts of Jaden, with his childish laughter and endless curiosity, poured through his mind, pulling Marcus back from the precipice of his self-doubt. It struck Marcus that leadership didn't operate in a vacuum. It required vulnerability, the willingness to reveal one's struggles. This revelation invigorated him, igniting a determination that had dimmed in the shadow of his earlier insecurities. The upcoming meeting felt different now, more than just a professional obligation. He envisioned framing his narratives not merely in terms of strategies or metrics but in connection to his journey. "If I share my story, I might just motivate them," he mused, anticipating the potential of synergy if he enabled the team to engage with their own vulnerable truths. On the day of the meeting, as he took his seat among the gathered team, he felt an unexpected surge of confidence coursing through him. The familiar anxiety danced at the edges, but this time it was tempered with a resolve to own his narrative. As he initiated the session, he startled even himself, directly addressing the room. "What I want to talk about today isn't just our metrics or implementation strategies. It's the essence of what drives us, our stories and our ability to learn from our journeys," he articulated, watching the faces around him shift from curiosity to intrigue. He shared the challenges of being a single father and how those experiences had shaped his approach to leadership. The vulnerability, raw and unfiltered, could have destabilized the room, yet it instead forged a connection he had long sought. He touched on the pressures to succeed, both in his role at work and as a parent, and elucidated how failure was woven into the fabric of growth. "What we're pursuing isn't just about succeeding, it's about evolving. Each setback is a stepping stone to understanding our potential," Marcus continued, fully mindful of the personal stakes. He sensed a shift, the atmosphere thickened with introspection and camaraderie. Greg, sitting still as a stone, visibly battled an internal struggle, his eyes narrowed, perhaps weighing whether to challenge Marcus or absorb what was being laid bare. "Marcus, are you saying we should embrace our failures?" someone asked, a voice intertwining skepticism with curiosity. "Precisely," he said, locking eyes with the questioner. "If we don't allow ourselves to be open to mistakes, we risk stagnation. The question isn't whether we will fail, it's how we respond when we do." The honesty hung in the air, allowing room for reflection among the team. Each member bristled with concealed stories and hidden struggles. The energy had transformed from hesitation to inspired dialogue. As they engaged more deeply, Marcus felt the earlier weight of his father's legacy transform into a guiding light, showing him the path forward. He could integrate his father's wisdom with his emerging identity, no longer just a son living in his shadow, but a man intent on crafting his own version of success infused with authenticity. But just as he began to feel the warmth of collaborative spirit, Greg interjected, his voice a piercing reminder of the challenges that still lay ahead. So what happens when sharing our struggles turns into a blame game? How do we maintain accountability? Marcus' heart sank momentarily, tension tightening around his shoulders. Was Greg right, or was this a tactic to derail him? Could vulnerability be misconstrued as weakness, opening doors for those unwilling to shoulder their own responsibilities? He paused, recalibrating his response. Accountability is a two-way street. We can support each other while continually holding ourselves accountable. Vulnerability doesn't exempt us from responsibility, it can be the very catalyst that drives us to do better. With determination solidifying his presence, he gave the room one last poignant question: are we ready, as individuals and as a team, to step beyond mere accountability, to embrace a culture of growth? As murmurs filled the room, Marcus held his breath, ready for whatever revelations or confrontations lay ahead. Had he finally irrevocably shifted the dynamics in his favor, or was this just the beginning of a more profound conflict? He knew he was poised on the brink, standing before a transformational choice that would define him not just as a professional but as a man. How far was he willing to go to forge this new identity? Would resistance from his colleagues reveal deeper truths about himself? As murmurs filled the room, Marcus could feel the atmosphere shift. The weight of Greg's challenge lingered like a storm cloud overhead, charged with the potential for conflict. He could practically hear the repercussions of the unfolding conversation echoing in his mind. What if Greg's resistance was just a symptom of a larger issue, one that could unravel the tenuous alliance he had just begun to forge with his team? His heart raced while he stared back at his colleague, focused and deliberate. He recognized the risk he faced. Failing to address the skepticism might diminish his hard-won authority, but taking the bait could provoke defensiveness instead of introspection. He had to strike a delicate balance. Awareness breeds accountability, he began, his voice measured. It's not about assigning blame for failures, it's about recognizing how those failures are touchpoints for growth. What we need is a culture where we see our mistakes not as failures but as collective opportunities to learn. This time when he spoke, he searched the eyes of his teammates, seeking signs of resonance. There was hesitation, but also glimmers of understanding. Even Greg seemed to soften, if only slightly. Let's put it this way, he offered, his tone lightening slightly to invite conversation. What if we shared a recent challenge we faced, not to judge one another but to see how we dealt with it and what we learned? We can learn from each other's stories. A moment of silence enveloped the room, pregnant with anticipation. Greg's brow furrowed, but the others looked intrigued. One by one, members began to share their tales of setbacks, miscommunications with clients, technical challenges, moments when they felt overwhelmed. Each story peeled back layers of professionalism to unveil the humanity within. As they delved deeper, Marcus was surprised by the intensity of emotions thrumming through the room. People spoke with an honesty he hadn't expected. At that moment, the office transformed from a battleground of egos to a fertile ground for growth. He felt an electric pulse of unity, much like the warmth he'd felt with Jaden on those afternoons spent in their backyard. But amid the shared vulnerability, anxiety still danced around the edges of his mind. Marcus wrestled with the realization that true leadership demanded more than just embracing his own flaws. It required a level of astuteness that he was unsure he possessed. How could he cultivate this culture of openness while ensuring that accountability prevailed? He glanced at Greg, who was now listening intently. This was his chance. Greg, how do you see this playing out in our day-to-day tasks? Would you feel more empowered by this approach? Greg shifted in his seat, seemingly caught off guard by the direct inquiry. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. It's an interesting perspective, he replied cautiously. But what if someone just starts using this as an excuse? Then it falls on us leaders to guide the conversation back to responsibility, Marcus responded, feeling conviction rise within him. We need a framework where we support each other, but we don't enable bad habits. That's the essence of accountability. The dialogue rippled through the team, and he sensed a turning point. Yet, in the back of his mind, doubt lurked like a shadow. Had he taken a step toward drawing them closer, or had he merely scratched the surface of deeper, unaddressed tensions? The meeting concluded with a tentative consensus: they would trial regular story-sharing sessions to transform their collective mindset. As Marcus walked out of the boardroom, his chest inflated with a blend of pride and uncertainty. He questioned the sustainability of this newfound culture. Would it genuinely foster growth, or was it just a shallow layer of camaraderie masking deeper conflicts? That night, as he sat with Jaden, watching the boy construct a fortress from building blocks, the boy's unfiltered joy washed over him. Perhaps, like Jaden's creations, true leadership required constant reinforcement. As father and son played, a nagging thought burst to the surface: Marcus hadn't just called for accountability, he had incurred an unspoken vow to maintain it. What repercussions awaited him if he failed to uphold that promise? The next day loomed large. Would implementing this culture of vulnerability reveal strengths or weaknesses he hadn't anticipated? How would he confront those vulnerabilities within himself? The morning sun seeped through Marcus's window, casting long shadows across the living room where scattered Legos still lay from last night's play session with Jaden. The youthful laughter echoed in his mind, a reminder of the joy in vulnerability, yet his heart was steeped in a sense of determination tinged with trepidation. Today would be pivotal. He needed to sustain the momentum generated in the meeting. As he arrived at the office, he found the atmosphere charged. The employees were still abuzz from the unexpected session on sharing vulnerabilities. The willingness to connect worried Marcus, for these revelations could also expose fractures in their teamwork. Acknowledging flaws was essential, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that some were still masked beneath bravado. Greg entered the office, a mix of annoyance and resolve on his face as he approached Marcus's desk. "We need to talk about yesterday," he said, arms crossed defensively. "I don't think everyone is on the same page. Sharing stories might not solve our issues." "Then let us address that," Marcus replied, his tone steady, inviting a dialogue rather than confrontation. "What concerns do you have?" "Not everyone wants to reveal their weaknesses. They're still trying to impress management. This could backfire." Greg's voice was laced with frustration, revealing his own fears about the new dynamic. Marcus felt the tension tighten. There it was, the reluctance of some to embrace this new approach, yet he understood that Greg's skepticism stemmed from a place of concern for the team's integrity. "If we don't provide a safe space for open communication, we risk losing the very trust we're trying to build," he countered. "But we can't ignore your point. Let's refine the method. What if we set ground rules for those sharing their stories?" Greg appeared to consider this. "Yeah, like a way to ensure it doesn't become gossip." "Exactly," Marcus responded, feeling a flicker of hope. "We could discuss how to frame these conversations, focusing on what we're learning rather than who's accountable for mistakes." "But you still have to realize not everyone is willing to be candid," Greg said, a hint of resignation creeping into his voice. Marcus nodded, internalizing that truth. The reality was that not every voiced concern would bring about change, but he had to believe this effort could, in time, foster a more profound connection. "You're right. We need patience and a consistent demonstration of support." If he was to ignite change, he needed more than a steadfast approach, he needed to be the embodiment of that culture himself. Marcus contemplated his role as a leader, grasping its multifaceted responsibility. How could he set the standard without feeling exposed himself? As the day unfolded, Marcus witnessed various reactions among his teammates. Some embraced the nascent vulnerability, while others recoiled at the notion of discussing flaws. He recognized how easily the facade of professionalism could slip back into fear and defensiveness. During lunch, Marcus found an unexpected moment to reinforce the initiative. A small group huddled around a table, their conversation strained but genuine. He joined them, not an overseer but a partner in exploration. "What do you think about sharing recent obstacles with our projects? How did they challenge you personally?" The hesitance lingered in the air. Yet, he pressed on, gently prodding, seeking to create a safe haven rather than a performance stage. He shared one of his own missteps, a muddled communication with a vendor that resulted in significant delays. The shared laughter melted the tension, offering promise in camaraderie. As momentum built, he noticed Greg reluctantly begin to engage, offering insights about his own experiences. The cracks in the walls were slowly being mended, but Marcus recognized his role as a steward to this emergent culture. He needed to navigate uncharted waters, facing the very insecurities that he saw reflected in others. By day's end, the burdens felt lighter, yet doubt loomed persistently in Marcus's mind. Had he done enough to stabilize this fragile framework of connection? While packing up his things, he resolved to ask his team for feedback on the changes they were implementing. Their perspectives might breed new growth, but the thought of exposing his own vulnerabilities gnawed at him. Marcus finished tidying his desk and glanced at his phone. An incoming message from Jaden's school prompted a quick pulse of anxiety. What if he faltered in maintaining his leadership as a father as well? He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing steadily, realizing this was more than just a professional transformation, it was personal too. How far could he allow himself to evolve before the scrutiny became overwhelming? Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind: what if this journey of openness and vulnerability extended beyond the office? How would he balance being the leader they needed while also being the father Jaden deserved? The day may have ended, but Marcus now faced a conundrum that ventured beyond work dynamics. The essence of personal integrity and transparency awaited him. Would he confront these truths head-on, or would self-doubt derail his progress yet again? Marcus's instincts buzzed with anticipation as he pulled into the school parking lot, the sunlight glinting off the surface of his car. A myriad of thoughts flooded his mind. Today's dialogue with his team had started to crack the surface of their collective hesitance, but would he have the same courage to confront his own realities? He spotted Jaden among a cluster of children, his laughter echoing through the air, and for a fleeting moment, he felt the weight of his fears dissipate. That laughter was a balm, an antidote to the knots tightening in his chest. As Jaden approached, clutching a freshly painted clay figure, Marcus smiled. "Dad! Look what I made!" Jaden exclaimed, holding up the object with pride. Marcus knelt down, his insecurities momentarily forgotten. "That's amazing, buddy. You've really outdone yourself." The bond they shared was something Marcus wanted to protect, but shadows of self-doubt crept in. Would Jaden appreciate authenticity as much as he hoped? Could he teach his son about vulnerability as he tried to do with his team? Each interaction in his personal life had begun to mirror those at work, blurring lines he thought were etched in stone. Later that evening, Marcus found himself at the kitchen table with Jaden, both prepping dinner. His son chatted animatedly about his day, oblivious to the mental wrestling match waging within Marcus. Every mention of excellence, every story of struggle from Jaden forced Marcus to reconsider his role as a father. "Dad, do you ever make mistakes?" Jaden asked suddenly, his doe-like eyes blinking up at him. Surprise washed over Marcus. "Of course, Jaden. Everyone makes mistakes. They help us learn and grow. Like when you get things wrong at work." The innocence in his son's question sliced right to the heart of Marcus's dilemma. "Exactly," Marcus replied, his voice steadying. "Sometimes, I make decisions and realize they weren't right. I think about how to do better next time." Jaden nodded, clearly contemplating. "You talk to your people about this stuff, right? Like sharing?" "Yes, sharing is important, but it's not always easy," Marcus admitted, the confession resonating deeper than he intended. Marcus watched Jaden's brows furrow as he chewed thoughtfully. The air became thick with unspoken truths, and it dawned on Marcus that perhaps the lessons he was imparting were actively working their way into Jaden's character. He was understanding the value of transparency firsthand. That night, as he tucked Jaden into bed, Marcus's heart swelled with a sense of hope. By allowing himself to be vulnerable, could he also foster resilience in his son? But even as he dreamt of transformations, the reality of the workplace weighed heavily on his mind. The following day, he arrived early at the office, determined to seek feedback from his team about the new approach. Still, A voice within him hesitated. What if they dismissed his ideas? What if they saw him as unable to carry the weight of good leadership? The fear of rejection loomed. As he prepared a brief note to gather thoughts, Greg interrupted him. Marcus, can we talk? His tone was serious yet softened by a hint of vulnerability. Marcus's pulse quickened. This was the moment he'd been both anticipating and dreading. Would Greg simply reaffirm his fears, or would they explore the cracks and build up a sturdier establishment? The team has been talking. It seems they want to share more but worry about being judged. They need assurance from you that this is a safe space, Greg said, shifting his weight anxiously. Yes, absolutely. It should be a collaborative space, Marcus replied, surprised by his own calmness. But I have doubts, am I leading this well? I'm not certain of my approach. Greg looked intensely at him, noting the honest admission that reflected his own concerns. You're doing better than you think. But you need to take the next step, show them you trust us as much as we're trying to trust you. Marcus felt a swell of determination. What if we open a session for feedback? Just us, sharing everything candidly. For a split second, Greg's face flickered with uncertainty. You mean allowing yourself to be really vulnerable with the team? Yes. It's time they see I'm committed to this as well, Marcus affirmed. Greg nodded, a newfound respect forming in his eyes. Then let us invite open conversation and ensure it's structured. As they finalized the plan, Marcus's doubts transformed into resolve. The process would be far from easy, and every practice of vulnerability took him closer to a pivotal transformation of his essence both as a leader and a father. But as he left for home, he felt the twinge of apprehension still lurking beneath the surface. He had taken a momentous leap in sharing with Greg, but what if the revelations he was about to unveil struck a more profound chord with his team than he anticipated? Would the walls he built around himself truly crumble, or would the vulnerabilities scatter like shards of glass? Marcus arrived at the office the next morning, the air buzzing with a sense of anticipation that felt almost electric. The sun's rays equipped him with an unusual blend of courage and optimism, qualities he had scarcely felt before. Today, he would be opening up a dialogue that could redefine not just his leadership style but his entire approach to interpersonal relationships. He prepared himself mentally for the upcoming session. Carefully crafting slides with key points on vulnerability, trust, and collaboration, Marcus was surprised by how naturally the words flowed. Each bullet point felt like a bridge connecting his insecurities to his aspirations, erasing the gap between who he was and who he wanted to become. As the clock approached the hour for the meeting, he sensed a stirring unease among his team as they filed into the conference room, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. Marcus took a deep breath and surveyed their faces. What if they weren't ready to dismantle the walls? What if his vulnerabilities were met with resistance, or worse, apathy? The possibilities swirled through his mind, but he had made a promise to himself. Today, he wouldn't back down. All right, everyone, today is about truth and transparency, he began, his voice steadier than he felt inside. I want us to build a space where we can all share our thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. I'm opening the floor, but it starts with me. That admission hung in the air like a dense fog, laden with tension. He could see Greg visibly settle in his chair, as if bracing for the first revelation. I've struggled with self-doubt about my leadership, questioning whether I'm guiding us correctly and whether I'm truly fostering an environment that encourages open sharing, Marcus confessed, allowing a moment for the weight of his words to settle. But I realize now that to inspire collaboration, I have to demonstrate vulnerability myself. It's essential to me that you all see me as a partner in this journey. The silence felt monumental, interrupted only by the occasional rustle of notebooks. He could sense the energy in the room shift, energy that transitioned from skepticism to curiosity, and perhaps something more profound, hope. Greg took a deep breath and spoke first. Thanks for sharing that. I think we all feel the pressure to perform and sometimes forget that sharing our challenges can yield new solutions. Agreeing nods rippled through the team. One by one, his colleagues began to share their experiences, struggles with projects, the fear of making mistakes, and the unexpected weight of expectation they felt. Each confession added depth to the session, layers that revealed not just their frailties but also their collective strength. Acceptance began to weave its way through the conference room, and with each story shared, Marcus felt a palpable shift within himself. Listening to others speak openly calmed him, comparable to the laughter of Jaden a day before. He had envisioned this space a sanctuary where creativity was born from honest dialogue. But he hadn't anticipated a sudden competitive edge. Clara, one of the newer team members, leaned forward, her voice clear but trembling. "I've held back in meetings because I thought my ideas wouldn't be good enough. But I realize now that I bring value, just like everyone here." She pushed through with her thoughts, and suddenly, her vulnerability inspired even more contributions. The conversation snowballed. As they shared their struggles, a new dynamic emerged. They started to brainstorm ways the team could better support each other. Ideas flowed with nearly euphoric energy, thrilling Marcus as he observed the transformation happening right before his eyes. Yet, underlying the elation was an unsettling thought. What if he had inadvertently opened doors to conversations that revealed deeper fissures within the team divisions that could be hard to repair once exposed? This was new territory, a delicate dance he hadn't fully prepared for. As they wrapped up, Marcus sensed they had crossed a threshold, but an impending doubt gnawed at him. Was he ready to facilitate these discussions moving forward, knowing what could surface? The session had unearthed more than just teamwork dynamics, it had cast shadows upon the unaddressed anxieties lingering within. With the meeting concluded, he felt a sense of purpose guide him to the exit. He didn't need to walk this path alone, there were other hidden complexities to confront both in himself and among his colleagues. The deep breath he took was filled with half-expectant fear and half-exuberant hope, but before he could process the emotions, Greg caught his arm. "I think we can build something meaningful here, Marcus. Just remember, you don't have to navigate this alone," he said, a new sense of camaraderie shimmering in the air. Marcus nodded, gratitude washing over him. The challenge ahead would demand more courage, but he felt ready to embrace it. However, lurking in the background was an overwhelming question: had they merely scratched the surface, or would the deep-seated issues within the team surface in ways he could scarcely imagine? The day had led to revelations, but would the next step bring them even closer, or unravel the very fabric of their collective resolve? Marcus left the meeting room, a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension still swirling within him. He had unearthed a new dynamic among his team, but the implications of their shared vulnerabilities began to weave an unsettling tapestry in his mind. As he returned to his desk, the gravity of the undertaking settled upon him like a wet blanket. His responsibility as a leader had shifted, he was now not just a figure at the front, but a participant in the personal struggles and triumphs of his colleagues. In the hours that followed, he could hardly concentrate on his assignments. Each email notification or chat message pulled him back to the uncertainty of what lay ahead. What if one of his colleagues' confessions opened old wounds or revealed conflicts that had long simmered beneath the surface? The prospect of becoming a conduit for unresolved issues felt daunting. That afternoon, Greg approached with an idea meant to cultivate the momentum they had gained. "Why don't we have regular check-ins?" he proposed. "A space dedicated to what we're feeling, beyond just progress reports. We need to keep this openness going." Marcus hesitated, considering the implications. On one hand, fostering open dialogue could deepen relationships and improve teamwork. On the other, what if those conversations sublimated into tension or dissent? He felt an urge to defend against what could go wrong, but was reminded of the promise he had made to embrace vulnerability, both for himself and his colleagues. "Let's try it," he said finally, though his voice carried an uncertainty he couldn't quite disguise. The challenge was set before him: lead a team toward intimacy without letting it overwhelm them. The week progressed with these check-ins added to their schedule. At first, they were a mix of routine updates and discussions, but gradually, the dialogue began to shift as comfort mounted. Marcus took notes on each meeting, more for himself than for anyone else. As time wore on, he felt himself becoming a more attentive listener than ever. It was in these moments of connection that he began to understand the power of empathy. He saw pieces of himself reflected in each of his team members' struggles. However, as the atmosphere grew more intimate, so too did the vulnerabilities. Each session brought new confessions, yet there were echoes of old resentments shadowing the air. Clara's earlier bravery inspired others to share, revealing some buried dissatisfaction with leadership processes that, unbeknownst to Marcus, had sown seeds of conflict. One particularly charged session led to a confrontation. Sarah, a high-performing sales team member, expressed frustration about feeling overlooked in meetings. Her voice shook, but the strength of her words provoked a collateral vulnerability in other teammates. It was clear now that while he had coaxed honesty, he might have unwittingly opened a Pandora's box. Why wasn't this discussed before? Marcus asked, his mind racing through the implications. Sarah's assertion, though shattering, was laced with a truth all too evident. Other colleagues chimed in, confessing their own frustrated feelings and struggles with perceived favoritism and exclusion. The atmosphere thickened with palpable tension, pulling at Marcus's resolve. What can I do to bridge this gap? He pressed, his voice trembling slightly, revealing his own insecurities as a leader. The room was pregnant with silence. He feared he had slipped from a facilitator into an inept leader. How could they trust he'd have the answers now? It struck Marcus that through this fragile process, every confession had reinforced his greatest fear. Was he truly fit to lead them through the intricacies of their growing emotional landscape? The foundations he recently felt strengthening now felt precariously shaky. As he navigated this uncharted emotional terrain, particularly with the next meeting looming, he wrestled with the reality that he might not possess all the answers. His leadership was at a pivotal point, and the shadows of doubt began to claw at his determination. What would happen if this process didn't yield the camaraderie he so desperately desired, but instead magnified their troubles? Lost in thought, he hardly noticed when Greg approached again, brow furrowed with concern. You look a bit overwhelmed, Marcus. You all right? Just trying to keep these check-ins productive, Marcus replied, masking his worry with professionalism. But deep down, he questioned whether providing space for openness would be the breakthrough they needed or the catalyst for deeper divisions. The urgency of these feelings urged him to confront something much larger. What if confronting personal truths unveiled hidden agendas that could fracture the team further? What if the real test of his leadership was not just guiding them through vulnerability, but confronting the unforeseen consequences that could emerge from peeling back the layers of their shared humanity? The moment of truth was closer, and the fates of each of them were tangled together in unforeseen ways. As the days turned to weeks, Marcus stood at the crossroads of personal growth and professional adversity. The recent check-ins, while initially enlightening, had devolved into staunch discussions about unsaid grievances and tensions among team members. The vulnerability he had encouraged had gotten unwieldy, sometimes revealing cracks he wasn't sure he could mend. Yet amid the chaos, he found strength, not just in others but within himself. One evening after another round of tough conversations, Marcus sat alone at his desk, the blue glow of his computer screen highlighting the concern etched across his face. It was time for a radical shift. He realized his previous attempts to guide the discussions were almost phony. He had poured too much into creating dependability instead of authenticity. What if, instead of seeking to manage the pain, he engaged with it openly, demonstrating how to face conflict? The next day, he gathered the team for their weekly check-in, determined to approach the hour with newfound clarity. As everyone took their seats, he felt a lump of anxiety in his throat. I need to speak from the heart, he initiated, almost hesitantly. I've been navigating the vulnerabilities we've surfaced recently, but I have to acknowledge that it scared me. I've noticed the tensions rising, and it's clear that we're not just addressing our challenges, we're wrestling with each other's truths. We need to confront that. Silence loomed. Peering around the table, he caught Clara's eye, the fear underlying his own shifted the energy. To lead, I need to be authentic with you all. I'm not just asking for vulnerability from you, I need to admit my own missteps and risk being flawed in front of you. He took a deep breath. I thought that by encouraging openness, I could create a smoother process. But I was wrong. I shouldn't dictate how we should feel or how we should engage with our struggles. As the silence fell, Marcus felt a shift in the room. Vulnerability shadowed by fear morphed into potential understanding. I'm here to learn alongside you. I want to hear the hard truths because if we don't, we risk silencing the very change we're seeking. A wave of realization washed over the team. Clara spoke up first, her voice steady. It's so easy to get lost in our roles and forget that we're human first, professionals second. Thank you for opening this up. Others chimed in, sharing moments when, perhaps out of fear, they had neglected to speak up, or issues they had bottled up. Let us create space for that, Marcus said with newfound resolve. Let us have transparent dialogues, real conversations about fears, not just to air grievances, but to build a strategy for moving forward. We're capable of greater collaboration if we can name and embrace our individual truths together. As Marcus spoke, he felt the burgeoning transformation not just within himself, but in how his colleagues opened up in return. This was the authentic engagement he sought to cultivate all along, a team not just connected by work, but by their shared human experiences. The weeks rolled on, rather than flatten under the weight of vulnerability, Marcus embraced it. They formed subgroups to address specific issues, and they also recognized moments of triumph. The emotional weight had turned into a shared fuel, uniting them. Watchful eyes turned from disdain to curiosity, from judgment to understanding. Marcus faced each day bolstered by the recognition that this journey does not solely belong to him. It was their collective effort that would shape the culture of accountability and transparency they aimed to cultivate. Their interactions transformed into dialogues filled with sincerity. The grappling of fears was met with gestures of support. Months later, he stood before the board of directors, a wide smile spreading across his face. Their presentation showcased not only impressive financial metrics but a significant rise in employee satisfaction and engagement. The members who once viewed Marcus as merely capable now recognized his growth, a leader who had faced vulnerability head-on. As the meeting concluded, their CEO leaned in, a glint of admiration in his eyes. Marcus, you've proven that fostering a healthy team culture is as crucial as meeting our targets. Your authentic leadership style has reinvigorated our team. Well done. Marcus absorbed the affirmation, a feeling of belonging washing over him. He felt fulfilled in a way he had never experienced before, fully understanding that this was not merely a professional achievement, it was a personal triumph as well. That evening, as he returned home to Jaden, stories of the day still swirling in his mind, he knelt to greet his son. Guess what? Jaden exclaimed. We had a talking circle today too. We shared our favorite moments from the year. Pride surged in Marcus's chest. That's amazing, buddy. What did you share? I told them how brave you are for sharing your stories. Jaden beamed, the genuine admiration in his eyes overwhelming. What Marcus had achieved was not simply transformation in a corporate landscape, it was an invitation for his son to partake in conversations that went beyond the ordinary. He wasn't solely leading a team, he was shaping the next generation. At that moment, Marcus confronted the realization that his journey had come full circle. He had not only conquered the systemic challenges of the world that surrounded him, he had nurtured an environment grounded in truth. His growth was neither a singular event nor did it have a finish line, it represented a continuum, a deep-rooted promise to embody growth, bravery, and authenticity personally as well as professionally. He now stood as a solid figure, not just for his team, but for Jaden, a distinction not rooted in perfection, but in the immeasurable value of resilience and self-acceptance. The air tasted sweet with self-awareness. Marcus knew he had discovered the essence of leadership, and even more than that, he had rediscovered himself. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this finale. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.